Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel is simply called Discerning What is True. I'm still reading from the particular book called Revelations of the Holy Spirit, Decoded by Phil Langdon. We're going to be reading chapter 13 tonight, that is, and today is the 12th day of November 2024. So let's get into the works here, and I'll try to share some other things here. So the title of the chapter is called The Beasts Out of the Sea and Land. So let me give you the right card for this particular deal, which is this card here. It's called Death. So let's get into the reading here. Let's see. The beast out of the sea and land here. And let me get it color coded here a little bit better for me to read. So today is the 12th day of November 2024. And the beginning here with the 13th card of the Tarot is Death. Partly because the light is the 13th product from the cosmic 12 and represents death, the reincarnating but new life for the ascended in its midst. Let's see, make it a little easier here. The death card represents a new way of life after the death of the old, lesser ways and habits, such as losing one's childhood to adult life, or ascension from the physical world, and even dying in old age. From gestation and birth, life, and ascension to old age and death is a three-stage cycle, commemorated by the three stations of the sun at sunrise, you see. That is, the sunrise being the birth of your day, high as the sun is the middle part of the day, and sunset is the end of your day. Metaphysically becomes aligned and complete by the process of life that sees the death of a physical and mental struggles into the birth of the divine angels, free from the fetters of the physical prison they were born into. The 13th Hebrew letter is Mem, M-E-M, which represents the number of 40, which means water and Messiah. There are two forms of the Mem, the open Mem and the closed Mem. As the Talmud explains, the open Mem represents the revealed Torah, and the closed Mem represents the Torah's secrets. Additionally, the Mem represents the womb, which ends with a closed Mem that represents the 9 months when the womb is closed. The open Mem represents the period of childbirth when the womb is open. What is the concept of 40? 40 represents a metamorphosis, a transformation after 40 days. The embryo of a child begins to assume a recognizable form. Metaphorically, water is the womb of creation. The Torah begins, quote, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," end quote. The next verse states that before God created the heavens and the earth, quote, "The Spirit of God hovered over the waters," end quote. What waters? Since the earth waters had not yet been created, the waters mentioned here are the womb from which creation emerged, the place of gestation before the world came into existence, the zero-dimensional abyss, the place where the dead go, and our safety net between incarnations. Now reading the book of chapter, that is reading chapter 13 of Revelation. Number one, and the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and on his head a blasphemy name. To the stellar projection of the human psyche, to the rites of Taurus and Orion, the beast out of the sea is Cetus, the sea lion constellation, also called the leopard and the sea bear, who rises from the navel samadhi center and is given power at the psychic heart center, the lower mind. The beast, that is. In the stellar projection, we find the Hydra, Hydra, the constellation that represents the beast later in the drama, at the horizon in the east, as if watching Cetus rising from the western horizon. So he shows us a picture of this, what we call from this overhead in the south side of the earth, south side of the view, that is, of it happening as it rises from the horizon, that is, the Cetus. His 7 heads are the 7 profane sensual desires. I bet you haven't heard those, have you? The lower profanities of the higher divine desires. His 10 horns are 5 polarized dual intellectual faculties associated with the highest of physical nature, crowned with false pride in the powers of the intellect alone, without intuition or philosophical reason. As James M. Price explains, quote, at the lower mind is the shadow or the reflected image, so to say, or, should say, of the true mind, the nous, which is symbolized as the lion. The beast is pictured as a pseudo lion, a hybrid, for it resembles the leopard, which was fabled to be a cross between the lion, that is Leo, and the panther, Pardus. It is slow going, with the ponderous paw of the bear. It has a mouth like a lion, thus simulating the voice of Nous. Revelation chapter 13, chapter 2, verse 2, I should say. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. Verse 3, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. According to James M. Price, the head that has a fatal wound only to be healed is the, quote, desire for life on the plane of the senses, a desire which the neophyte, I should say, must utterly eradicate. So there's already a warning, you see, from what he's saying here. To utterly eradicate any desire for physical existence is a puritanical view that also denies the condition of a returning angel, one who incarnates to show others how to become masters of themselves. If we give a fish for a person to eat, they can eat for a day. If we give them a fishing rod, they can feed themselves for life. Engaging in physical life is not sin when we know ourselves. The lower mind can only perceive the futility of life when its transcendent is extrapolated, leading to poor personal choice and self-destructive tendencies due to the lack of higher-minded, that is philosophical, vision, inherently rejected as unknowable, but easily understood as the difference between walking while looking at the floor compared with looking up towards the horizon that goes on and on. When the Zen master says, quote, we'll see, end quote, he means all things change and develop continuously if they are manifest. Quote, the whole world was astonished and followed the beast. End quote. Verse 4, quote, men worship the dragon because he has given authority to the beast, and they also worship the beast and ask, quote, who is like the beast? Who can make war against him? Verse 5, the verse says simply, the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemings, and to exercise his authority for 42 months. So there comes that 3.5 years. Exercising authority for 42 months is the same as 1,260 days or 3.5 years. The first half of standard initiation training, isolating the value of 42 equals 3.5 times 12. Metaphysically, that is 3.5 times physics, being 12. Month, and then in brackets here, moon/Thor equals 30 days. 30 is L, lame. And lame in brackets means teaching and learning. As focus on the higher philosophical mind takes up more time, the initiative will wrestle with their intensifying psychophenic mind, the influence of the heart, where the beast is identified, learning, that is, in effect, to gain control of themselves in the process. It does not mean regular physical activity relationships have no place in life without it. We would not be here to enjoy ascension. Therefore, the restrictions placed on initiative is to help focus on the task at hand at the time of commitment, to understand the highest and noblest truth. This can, of course, be done through the normal course of life as well. It simply takes longer. In other words, the text of verse 5 is saying initiative will still be of a somewhat profane nature during the first half of their standardized initiation into divine philosophy. Verse 6 and 7 here. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. He also stated he was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them, and he was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Verse 8, all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose name have not been written in the book of life, belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. The archetype of the Creator here, opening his mouth to blaspheme and slander God's name by generating the hot and wrathful universe, is only a figure of speech to overemphasize the distinction between the lower and higher minds, or higher ideas, I should say. He was given power to make war, end quote, is simply telling us again how the creative principle, born from ascension, generates a physical system that kills everyone in the end, even saints. No one can stand against the beast, except the one who conquers death. Angels, in other words, those who ascend and, quote, die before they die, so that when they die, they do not die. So what it means simply is that you have a responsibility to actually to die to yourself here. You see, before you do actually die, and then you have to die your own ego, all the things that actually make up of you and your own ideas of what you think is true, which is not true. And that must die within you. And that means simply as you ascend before you die. So that when they die, they do not die. You see, they become, like I would say simply with Phil, would be a small g, which would be a god or angel, same thing. The beast and his image are referring to the physical nature of the world and its attractions away from spiritual nature within. Those who are ascended know what is good above the obvious physical level. Their names are written on the book of life. They have made the light with God. And so when you say make the light with God, well, what it means simply is that you are light. You come from light, you see. And so you actually join with God, in other words. The slain lamb is the light they made with God, who exists from the creation of the world and lives forever. He who was the creator and is now the savior is to come at the home of angels. The journey of redemption is suffered through our incarnations throughout the universe, created by the automatic product of spiritual union. By ascending, we redeem not only the act of creation by closing this loop in ourselves, but the divine child of creation itself, lifting him up at the Son of God, recognizing the higher mind over the lower. Well, most people are actually in the lower mind. They don't know anything in regard to what the higher mind is all about. See, the higher mind is actually the real self, the real you, that you came from God, the light within you. So when Phil says something, he shared this, just remembering some things here. When the ascension takes place and you're in the abyss, which is dark, black, there's a light that shines in. That light comes from you. You see, when you ascend, that's the way you are able to see the particular characteristics as you see this, what is taking place within your own mind. So when Scripture says you are the light of the world, you are the light of the world. But most don't know that. You see, 99.999% of people don't know that. And part of it simply is that the church has done a real good job of making people feel inferior to the point that simply they don't even try, because they're seen as simply as that. I said to Phil that the way the John Calvin saw those who are sinners is that simply they're like worms before God. They don't mean anything to God, is what they're saying, and that's not the truth. You see, it's an enormous detrimental perspective. I'm not saying that man is perfect either. I'm just saying simply that it's a bleak deal here when the churches say this, and that's how they get people to think. You're born in sin. Born in sin is probably what we say simply is you're born into this world, the physical world. Verse 9, he who has an ear, let him hear. That's what I always try to say simply is that if your ears are open and your eyes and your ears, because they're very important. Your eyes are critical for you to see things, but your ears are simply more prevalent to hearing what sparks into your mind. Simply is, okay, what is this guy talking about? You see. So you have to have a real hearing. You just don't gloss over it. Verse 10, if anyone is to go into captivity he will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword he will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of the saints. To have an ear is to have wisdom and intuition. During the tribulation of incarnations, which means we come here many, many, many times. When we live in life here, that is the tribulation. Living here on this planet is a tribulation. Most people struggle day by day across the world just to have something to eat, much less than that. So during the tribulation of incarnations, because we have the opportunity to always come here and to make heaven within ourselves. Not heaven on outside, but heaven within yourself. That is impossible. There can be heaven on earth. It's impossible to have peace on earth, because the reality simply is there is no peace with most men. There is no peace. That's why in reality, when you say peace, we almost say simply it's the joining of the two. You're divided into singularity, who is who you really are. To have an ear is to have wisdom and intuition. Anyway, we got back to tribulation. We'll encounter a range of potential experiences depending on the level of ignorance we find ourselves in. Our own cravings for the things of physical life is what brings us to its yoke, where we suffer its automatic washing machine effect of throwing back at us what we put into it. Remain faithful to understand, or I should say, remain faithful to understanding and truth. And we will make it home if we are, on the other hand, let it get to us, we will create more karma for ourselves that require more incarnations to work through and release due to the generated unconscious content. When we know and see the distinction between the constant, robust, and eternal nature of spirit and the transient nature of the universe, it becomes easier to ride out these testing experiences. More so, because the distance of one vision sees for miles with spiritual wisdom, or outstripping the shadow view of the physical world and its dead end ways, or dead end views. So verse 11 says, Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. Verse 12, he exercised all the authority of the first beast on his behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. Another beast coming from the earth is the pseudonym, or pseudo, I should say, lamb, coming from the lowest, most physical, creative samadhi center, the element called earth, as carnal love instead of divine love, in forms such as unbalanced sentiment, emotional impulses, and irrational religious zeal. So this is the lowest part. This is why the earth is the lowest part, you see, on the elements, four elements. And the way they go up simply is that you have the earth, then the water, then the fire, and then the air. Okay, those are the four elements. Each of us are born in a particular astrological sign, which gives you some type of idea of where your background is, but it doesn't tell you the whole thing. It depends on a lot of things, simply why you're born here. But it takes a while for you to even gravitate towards that and understand that. And it's basically simply is to, until you get 40 years old, as it says earlier when we was talking about 40, that's when you begin to start seeing some things and say, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Or, and that takes many, what we call reincarnations here. It's not the one and done type of program that's been taught to us by the church, which is uses fear, immense fear. As a dual principle, he had two horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. The same source of uninspired traditional dogmatic religious convention and ethics as the lower Pharaonic mind, as a constellation near Aries and Taurus, sometimes pictured with two horns. Medusa, the Gorgon, whose head was cut off by Perseus and still turns all to stone, is also referred to as Satan's head. I think this is, yeah, like the snakes in the head. There's a picture of this. Probably, let's see if we can show it to you best I can. It's in color here. This reveals that. One of the most fantastic or unrealistic magical powers associated with Medusa was bringing fire down from heaven. The pseudo lamb metaphorically draws fire down from the sky of the highest samadhi center in its own intellectual limitations. That manifests as all kinds of unbalanced disorders, you see. Understanding truth takes for experience a point blank in ourselves, and that is done in silence when all the mind chatter has ceased. So if we understand somewhat a little bit of what we call Carl Jung, we're in this phase, I think, simply is that long ago, the astrology charts that is outside of ourselves, astrology, would deal with what we call with our psychology, you see. And as that has dropped, and suddenly this you have Carl Jung is talking about these things. It's the emphasis back on the psychology of the person. And almost all of us are mental sick. Truly, almost all of us on this planet are mentally sick. Part of it has to do with what we call trauma that took place in our lives. That's part of it. And I haven't read a whole lot about Carl Jung, but I know that I have to ask sometimes Phil Langdon sometime when we get a chance to meet again. Phil Langdon did study psychology also, but he didn't. I don't think he studied it if I recall correctly, he didn't study it in a college or university setting. He basically studied it through some of the books he has there, and he began to grasp what it was about. So let's continue on. So the pseudo lamb, metaphorically, that is, draws fire down from the sky of the highest samadhi center in its own intellectual limitations that manifests as all kinds of unbalanced disorder, which we just said. These are all kinds of disorders with mankind. This is why we do stupid things, crazy things. That's what happens simply is that one may be in a good feeling one day and the next day is completely like in a pit. Understanding truth takes for experience at point blank in ourselves, and that is done in silence when all the mind chatter has ceased. I've said that before. I'm sorry, I get a little bit enthusiastic here about reading it. And he performed great and miraculous signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in full view of men. Because of the signs he was given power to do on behalf of the first beast, he deceived the inhabitants of the earth. He ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Quote, the signs he was given power to do is the fallacy that creation is ultimate reality, and the highest level of intellectual achievement is the lower mind. Quote, the inhabitants of the earth, end quote, being the universe, are initially deceived by physical nature into thinking there is nothing else, as if spirituality has no place. And I think we come to that part in a lot of ways, since Christianity is dying, and this is where we're at in some ways. And so we are now saying simply is that some of the whole idea of simply God is dead, you see, and that's has brought this whole idea of raising the physical nature. It's a lot to do with sometimes simply to do with what we do. People do is worship nature in many ways. Verse 15, he was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that it could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. Verse 16, he also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or in his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of his number of his name. Those that do not carry these superstitions of the lower mind, that is, the one that judges without making sure of facts, which most people do this today, enormously. They just simply are emotionally pulled one way or the other. The positive, negative, right and left, all this kind of thing going on, are often persecuted by those around them that discover their different point of view. His power is to give breath to the image of the first beast, the humanoid being who speaks blaspheming and causes the death of others who disagree with their particular politics. War is normal on Earth, you see, for instance, due to human nature lacking depth, compassion, and clear understanding. Yeah, I wonder why we have so many wars. Like I've shared long ago, the United States has been at war just about ever since its existence. Seriously, it's been in war. I doubt there's been 20 years of quote unquote peace. The whole existence over 200 years of America's existence. I mean simply we've always been involved in some country either trying to oust some type of leader or quote unquote taking over a particular small country or whatever you want to name. People just are not aware of this, what happens that way. So in other words, what I'm trying to say simply is that war is normal on this planet. It should be that way. No one can operate on a planet in the cosmos without occupying a transient physical body marked for death. They cannot engage in the usual custom of trading with other demons or humanoids without one, for obvious reasons. This verse then is a simple statement about ordinary life. Until we find our own redemption and send our bit of the cosmos, our own physical body, the highest physical nature has to offer in the lower mind, which in Greek is he phin, which is gematria, of which is 666. And this is another misunderstanding with such and such. So we're going to move on. Verse 18. This calls for wisdom. If anyone has insight, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is man's number. His number is 666. One important point made by Elaine Pagels, as many other scholars support, is that a portion of Revelation, if not all, might be taken as historical and may fit the first century the book was written in. For instance, the Emperor Nero is said to be the source and personification of the beast, whose number is 666. The letters in the emperor's name add up to 666 using the simple system of gematria. This contention is further supported by an older and simpler version of Revelation, which states the number of the beast is 616 instead. So the Emperor's Nero name, taken with or without a certain letter, add up using gematria to 616 and 666 respectively, depending on how we spell it. This is one of the main arguments to support an historical prophetic interpretation of Revelation, containing it to the 1st century AD and the Roman occupation of the Holy Land. In the 3rd century AD, it was common practice to the point of mimicking today's giraffe to account for characteristics by using the gematria of the name of the person in question. This accounts for the use of 666 or 616 as the name of a person who personified the most beast-like characteristics, and the Emperor Nero certainly fit the bill at the time of the writing of Revelation. However, the text does not state the number attributed to any person in a historical sense, but the human being or the human body itself is a man's number. So it has nothing to do with the name, is what Phil is trying to explain here. He's saying simply is that the human body is the beast. And what that means simply is the flesh. The flesh has all kinds of urgings. It can be simply is to have water and something to eat. That's nothing wrong with that, because you have to sustain yourself. But there are other things simply as the body has cravings for that are not needed in life, and craves either all kinds of things that actually are detrimental, not only but just detrimental to your soul. In fact, there are many and various methods of acquiring the number 66 from all sorts of sources, such as Vicarius Filii Dei, which is the vicar of Christ as an example, but the contextual nature of each successive title fitting the 66 quoted may fall short or wobble to the side of the evil nature it represents. Numbers represent the archetype of existence manifestation applicable to both the physical tangible world and the invisible intellectual world of philosophy. For instance, the number 9 refers to consciousness or spirit or truth, and can be derived in any number of ways using gematria. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18, which is 18, or then adding the 1 plus 8 equals 9. Likewise, the number here with 144000 gives us 1 plus 4 plus 4 is also adds to 9. Yet 144 refers to the higher mind. You see, is Isos 888, not the lower mind of 666. In the context of gematria of some number in Revelation may be stated as effectively highlighting the nature of consciousness and how it can be transformed from human to angelic. This, however, means using numerology on the resultant numbers of 666 and 616, not in their derivation not in the duration, and not on numbers in Revelation as to 9. In the Greek mysteries, each aspect of the self associated with the chakras has a associated gematria, starting with the conqueror being 1000, intuitively wise being 999, the higher mind 888, the cross 777, the lower mind 666, desire 555, the serpent's coil 444, incontinence and licentiousness are both 333. Interesting. If we remove the last letter, that is N, which is 50, represents the fish. John in the abyss from 666. Ephraim, we are left suggestively with the light alone as creator and gematria of 616. So he shows something here what would be also shared by author M. Young. And these are the kingdoms here. And on one side you have Yaldabaoth, and the other side you have the singularity perspective, which is simply being single-minded. And then on the left you'll have creation, and then you'll have all the way down, and then you go back up. And creation is where you, quote unquote, meet yourself, meeting God within yourself. Hope you can see that. So the number 6 represents the highest of physical nature, just before spiritual nature takes over with the completeness of 7. 7 always is a higher number, you see. 6 is the number of steps on the tree of life before the 7th, and God reunification. 6 is the number of kingdoms made by the single creator dash devil, whose best creation is the 6th kingdom, which is simply the humanoid being or human body. And then we have what you call the archons, the physical and the spiritual, you see. So the archons are what we call 7 heads and 10 horns. Let's see if I can get it up here. The physical has 3 physical centers, and the spiritual has 3 spiritual centers also, with the triangle being at the head instead of the round. It is actually headed with a triangle. Compare the 2 reflective worlds of the individual to the cosmos that made them. The evil nature of 666 is everything that is physical, but not spiritual, and may be derived by considering the reverse sense of unifying spirit, 3 aspects with the 6 energy kingdoms of the creative principle as the beast alone, without the lamb of salvation as a result. Instead of the spiritual being 111 or 1000 of God, we have the physical 666 of mankind under the beast. So we have a macrocosm that is actually on the left and a microcosm here. Let's see if I can show that right here. And so the macrocosm, there are certain triangles in here. They're actually 1, 2, 3, 4, and the outer one would be the 5th one. Okay. And so you have on one side the red dragon being the archons, and you have the false prophet being human, and then in the middle you have 666. And then you have the part we call the beast, the creator, and then you have the ascension sign at the very top. It's also revealed in what we call when lotus position. This also represents what we call the bottom being essential. Well, of course it is, you see. And then your stomach area would be what we call desire. And then your area up here, your chest area, is what we call the lower mind. Now, that would be the macrocosm perspective. Okay? In a different way. Let me continue here. We're almost finished here. Let me just do this. Early pagans like Pythagoras used geometry, that is, or geometric symbols as mathematic codes to record their knowledge and ideas. One of those is the magic square of the sun, which has a 6x6 grid going back in antiquity to the Middle East. The rows, columns, and diagrams of the matrix add to 111, each a triplet of metaphysical from which creation is a necessary evil. So this is kind of, see, unfortunately it has a too small a picture here, but I'll just, the magic square of the sun. And I'm trying to figure it, I'm just looking at it here as it's the last part of this chapter here. It comes out, and I'm going to have to look at, I'm going to have to ask Phil about this one because I do not understand it completely. On the first column that is on the extreme left, you have 6, 7, 19, 18, 25, and 36. And I gather simply is those numbers, if I can add them up in my head here, is roughly going to be, it's going to add up to 111. And then it's going to go crosswise also at the very top. So one is a vertical line, and the other one is actually a horizontal line. At the very top would be 6, 32, 3, 34, 35, and 1. So that would be 38, 41, 75, then 110 with 35, and then 1 being 111. And it does that way all the way, each way here. And each one adds up to 111. So there are 6 tops, there's 6 levels here, and eventually leads to 666 is what it shows. But I would like to know more about this whole thing because it's a 6x6 grid. So it's 6 up and down, and it's 6 horizontal. And eventually those numbers add up to 111 on each column. And then what happens simply is they equal 6x6 being 666. So that is the end at this point. This particular chapter, chapter 13, kind of pretty straightforward actually. This also, I think, is the Bible. Sorry, as the Revelation book has been divided in 3 parts here. You had the first 7 chapters, and I think we're at 8 through 14, and then after that, I think it's the 15 through 21 or something, or 15 through 22 or 7. So the next chapter will be the last of the second section of this particular book. But at this point, we're just going to end with chapter 13, and so I hope that this makes some sense to you. I appreciate you being here, and hopefully we'll talk to you in the near future. And let me just do something real quick. Okay. So that's the end at this point. And let me get to my screen. No questions. If there is questions, I would try to answer your questions, but no one's here. So we're going to end this particular broadcast tonight with chapter 13. And again, this was dealing with the beast. Many people have a struggle with this chapter. Many of they don't see themselves as a beast. They don't. Which actually, if you realize that you are a beast, that you are actually out of control, which most of us are, and we're always seeking what benefits us in our own short lives. So we're not looking for higher things. We're not looking for truth. We're always seeking something, with money or the good life, All these things are not evil in itself, but they don't lead to truth, you see. And that's why it's the beast. Also, simply this, if you understand advertisement today, um, you can see the way how they glorify certain things around us. One would be simply is the bodies of each sex, either male or female. And there are other ways of that, simply as to getting up to the highest point in the corporate world. Um, just very simple things, just simply having, a little bit of luxury in life. And I'm not saying these are bad things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying simply is those are what we call the pursuit of things that basically are not higher. They're not the most important things in your life. And that's why people reincarnate here many times. But that's part of the growing up too, you see. So I hope you have ears to hear, eyes to see, and that may your heart have understanding tonight. Again, this is Revelations of the Holy Spirit Decoded by Phil Langdon. This is chapter 13. Hope you have a good night. Take care.